Okay, so I think we are rolling. Hello and a very warm welcome to all our viewers who are just tuning in. I, Tariq Ahmed, welcome you all to another very special session, which we believe will be beneficial for a huge chunk of our audience. And the central theme of today's virtual show is unearthing possibilities in the Indian pharmaceutical supply chain. And today's event is powered by FM Logistic India. So, the pharmaceutical industry has been at the epicenter of the global catastrophe that we continue to reel under. While the industry outpaced its own limitations in standing up to the greatest challenge that this century had to offer in terms of large scale critical planning and implementation, it unearthed a plethora of possibilities and opportunities that have proved to be instrumental for the industry to regain its ground and emerge as a savior for the global humanitarian crisis. While the current performance of the industry has been exemplary, the time is ripe to prepare for the future, to look for the bigger challenges and the opportunities and segment that we are going to discuss today is going to be the reflection of the same. So, to lend more light to it, we have with us a very distinguished panel of speakers who has joined us today. First up, we have Mr. Vickram Srivastava, who is the head of planning global supply chains at Sun Pharma. Hi, Vikram sir. Welcome to the show. Next up, we have Mr. Gaurav Bhatia, GM Supply Chain, Reliance Retail Pharma. Hello, Gaurav sir. Welcome to the show.
Hi.
Next up is
Thank you, sir.
Next up is Mr. Bharat Bhushan Rathi, who's the logistics head at Mankind Pharma.
Hi,
Hi, Mr. Rathi. How are you?
hi, I'm fine.
Okay. So next is Mr. Atul Anand. He's the Director, New Initiatives, Real Estate Development and Special Projects, FM Logistics India.
Hello everyone, welcome to the show.
Hello, Mr. Atul. So finally, we have Mr. Jan Viegas, who is an industry expert and who needs no introduction. So he will be steering today's discussion as he is also the moderator of today's session. So welcome to the show, everyone. So before I hand over the reins of the show to Mr. Jan Vegas, I would just like to give a note to our audience that we will also be having a Q&A session towards the end of this discussion, toward the end of the panel discussion. So all the audience can go ahead and type in their questions so that the audience, the panelists could take up your questions. So with that, Rian Vegas, over to you, sir. Please take over.
Thank you, Tariq. It's very nice of you to have introduced the whole panel.
Yes, sir.
And let me begin. We have all experienced the uncertainties in the environment during the past 18 months. The virus and lockdowns have taught us to manage our supply chains in times of crisis. So from a management by crisis method, we need to move on to find innovative ways to manage our supply chain. Hence this topic, unearthing possibilities. We have experienced some hurdles, but I've also experienced some outstanding ways of fulfilling customer demand within the new regulations. This pandemic has taught us to be more disciplined, process-oriented, and aware that supply chain is among the most critical functions to business success. With respect to the pharmaceutical and healthcare sector, the demand pattern has changed drastically. People are now more aware of their immediate needs of health and have reprioritized their elective medical care. For example, people postponing visits to the dentist or eye specialist. These times are also an opportunity to redesign our supply chains. The Indian pharmaceutical supply chain has been a traditional one for decades, and very little change has been initiated post GST, especially in our distribution models and processes. In addition, we have e-pharmacies which are making an impact in the pharma supply chain. So to discuss all this, we have an esteemed panel from Sun Pharma, Mankind Pharma, Reliance Retail Pharma, and FM Logistics, the logistics service provider, who will dwell on several topics like building resilience within the pharma supply chain, maintaining commercial viability, the changing scenario of pharma logistics, how COVID-19 is reshaping the supply chain, current and future trends of pharma distribution in India, building competencies for the pharma sector, and some cold chain best practices, etc. We are looking forward to an interesting discussion and would encourage our audience to send in your questions to the organizers so that we can take them up post our panel discussion. With that, let me begin with my first question to the panelists. I think the first question I will request all panelists to respond, and of course I will call you by name so that we can do it in a proper way. And I think in the current crisis, I think building resilience within the pharma supply chain has become one of the most critical issues uh, to manage fulfillment of demand. So I would like maybe let's begin with Vickram Srivastava. You can throw some light on this topic and how you have been able to manage or overcome the supply chain during these times. Vickram.
Thank you, Ryan sir. I'd like to begin by first thanking Logistics Insider, Gaurav, Tarek, and the entire team for putting us on this panel and putting up the show together. And a very warm good evening to all the listeners, and a very warm good evening to all my co-panelists. So I mean, Ryan sir, I mean, very pertinent. Supply chain has come to fore in all industries that I have friends and colleagues working in. Pharma, of course, being an essential service provider, is also in at the helm of action, so to speak. Throughout the pandemic we were there. So but before we start talking about how we build resilience and what we did, just like to give a quick snapshot of what happened. It was probably a black swan event, unprecedented, rarest of the rarest. Where both demand and supply came to a grinding halt at this probably the same time. We, as supply chain professionals, we've seen multiple issues in our supply chain earlier also. The trade war with US and China, the supply challenges of chemicals coming from China. We all know China is a factory to the world and India is a pharmacy to the world. But we have seen those things in the past. We've seen the volcano eruption in Iceland completely stopping the air freight movement across Europe and US. So challenges are something that supply chain professionals we have always had to deal with. But what was unprecedented in this point of time was both supply and demand came to a grinding halt, because on the upstream, if I have to talk about upstream supply chain, where my procurement got impacted, my production got impacted, because there were localized lockdowns. Procuring material, importing them into India, into your factories, became a challenge. So upstream challenges were there. Downstream, we all know distribution logistics was a huge issue. Pharmaceutical goods, as we all know, majority of the goods which are airshipped moves on passenger bellies, and there were no passenger air freights for the last 18-20 months. They are not still flying. So how do we move 50-60% of our goods? Not everything can be consolidated into containers. There are very high value shipments also which getting a container for these high value shipments also becomes a challenge. Not all shipping lines are taking it. And with the event of the entire crisis, we are now hearing terms like ghost sailing, blank sailing, where ships are skipping ports and moving on to the other ports. So availability of container, availability of freighters is become a challenge. And of course, Ryan sir, like you mentioned in your opening remark, sensing demand has become a challenge. Getting a unified demand view, even in pharma, which is expected to have a pretty solid forecast in terms of what patients are going to buy, what kinds of medications are going into the market. But the entire pandemic threw that entire equation out of the window. So that itself was a challenge. So we broke this entire problem into many pockets, to build resilience, how we can restruct our supply chain back to track. So if we start with demand, we had more closer collaboration, started having more closer collaboration with the sales and marketing team. The SNOP cycle got squeezed from probably a monthly cycle to probably a weekly cycle. I call it now the sales and execution plan. It's no more planning. What we need to execute now, we are doing it. So we moved into that space. The monthly planning bucket got squeezed. If you have to look at your production planning, we started looking at how we can have multiple sites approved quickly. And I must say, over here, even the regulatory bodies helped us, in terms of getting approvals, because we know in pharma everything needs to be regulatory approved, whether you're changing your batch size, whether you're changing your manufacturing location. So we were getting tremendous support from even the regulators. And on the procurement front, before I hand it back over to you, sir, on the procurement front also, a lot of action has been started in terms of building resilience, localized buying, how we can look at developing vendors which are not dependent on one particular geography or country, how we can de-risk. And just to share a very quick statistics with the group over here, I mean, we were already doing this. I mean, a lot of supply chain guys were doing it. Of the S&P, top 500 companies, almost 30% of those companies were already pre-COVID looking at localized or regionalized buying and procurement and supplies. And the entire COVID has only pushed that entire impetus to look at alternate vendors, look at alternate sourcing. And in pharma, like I said, it's going to take time, but our goal is that we build resilience into our supply chains so that we are better prepared for the next impact, whatever shape or form it comes and hits us, because we don't know if it is going to be the third wave or something else. But from a business continuity perspective, I think resilience, agility in building into your pharma supply chains is core to what supply chain managers are now doing today. That's my take, sir. My opening remarks. Yeah.
Thank you, Vickram. Very interesting opening remarks, and I would request Gaurav if you can throw some light on the same subject.
Sure. Thank you, Ryan. So again, very warm welcome to my co-panelist, and also a hearty welcome to our listeners. So very quickly on the topic subject of building resilience in supply chain, and from pharma perspective, the topic which we are discussing, or the subject which we are discussing, very important. To first of all, I remember a quote which I want to put here, very beautifully said by someone, that it's not about how badly you are hit or how badly you fall. It is about how quickly you rise up. And that is exactly what resilience is. So and Vikram very well said that we have been hit by earlier challenges, and in supply chain, if challenges are not there, you won't actually enjoy supply chain. So challenges are very much part of our life, and we are all used to it. But it is about planning and looking ahead, thinking ahead. How can you plan so that in case of any risk to your supply chain, you are you have some cushion, you have some buffer, you have some risk mitigation strategies, as we say. So supply chain has a very beautiful subject called supply chain risk management, SCRM, and that is something which I personally like a lot, where it very beautifully summarizes it into 4 steps. And I would quickly, for everyone, I would like to summarize that: risk identification, risk assessment, risk steering, and finally risk monitoring, which closes the entire loop. So you identify that risk, you assess the risk, you steer through that risk, whether these risks are pre-plannable or avoidable. You do that, and finally you monitor that risk and close that loop. Now you again bifurcating for the interest of coming to the resilience, which forms the solution to it. The risks are of two types. One is known risk, which we daily deal in day in day out. Like your kind of demand forecasting is a known risk. You will never be 100% accurate in that. So it's a given that if you are having a 75, 80, 85 at max, that kind of forecasting accuracy, there is still a risk of unknown of that 15-20% delta that you always have, and you build your supply chain to kind of cater to that. Then you know procurement, supplier delays, machine breakdowns inside your factories. These are all known risks. You will face them, and you face them almost daily, day in day out. Now, unknown risk, which are like beautifully said, pandemic, black swan event of this magnitude and this volume was totally unforeseen, unknown risk. Then in pharma, again, unknown risk is you get 483s, you get warning letters from FDAs. So you have to be at all the time on your toes, protected for that, as well as kind of ready to have build that resilience. So if anyone else get those letters or any unforeseen risk, you have that opportunity in form of, say, a protective capacity to cater to those opportunities, or you have your alternate vendors ready, your suppliers ready, and hence today after this pandemic, we all are seeing the advantage that Indian pharma is getting. So there is a policy not just by Indian finished formulation pharmaceutical organizations, but even outside India, they are all having a China plus one policy. We all are aware of that. So a lot of inflow, a lot of advantage has actually turned in favor of Indian pharmaceutical industry. And again, this is strong, I would say, gratitude and thanks to the supply chain professional all across the network. It is not just in demand forecasting, planning, supply planning, but also in last mile deliveries, logistics, in terms of your procurement, that we have the strategies which are very well played, and we are all developing a much more stronger supply chain with this learning, I would say, in terms of development of key vendors, new supplier base, in terms of developing our stock to norms. Again, a very key metric to kind of build your resilience for future. So stock to norms are very important, be it on the material side or on the formulation side. So that helps. I think so. To summarize, both on the procurement side, we have kind of AVDs, which is China plus one policy, or even on the manufacturing side or our supply planning side, we have today stock to norms. Buffer norms are being more strictly adhered. They were always planned, but now we see a more strict adherence to the same. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. Maybe we'll move to Bharat. Maybe Bharat, you can share something from Mankind Pharma or your
Yeah.
previous experience. It would be very interesting for us.
Good evening, all. Thanks, Logistic Insider, for including me in such an elite panel. So, what Vickram and Gaurav told, so just in addition to that, so in my point of view, when it's a resilient supply chain building, so it's a shock-proof kind of a thing that we need a shock-proof supply chain, we need a shock-proof distribution, we need a build to have a flexibility in our supply chain and in the distribution strategies. So the most important is it's not a one-day job. So it's slowly and steadily we need to evolve this. So that is for sure that this pandemic that it's an this kind of a thing that nobody can plan this. But yes, from this pandemic, we learn a lot. By learning means, as Vickram told us, that it's a weekly kind of a thing. We are from to a V cycle. Yes, that's a one way to make your flexibility more flexible with respect to environment and respect to change of environment. So that's important. And for all that, solid vendors, yes, it's one of the part of one of the strategy, that's China one, two vendors, three vendors. And we all need to understand whenever you are creating these A plan, B plan, C plans, so that involves certain commercials also. And not only commercials, but it's a procedure. So you cannot have a shockproof supply chain or distribution in a single month, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. But it's a long chain. After 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, you will be evolving your company. And if this pandemic occurs, then you can absorb the such portion of 50% or 60%. Obviously, you cannot predict everything. You cannot be prepared with a spare capacity. But one of my personal experience is that now companies are investing on this, at least big 500 companies, big 200 companies in pharma industry, where now a plan B and a plan C is considered in the distribution and supply chain, like this needs to be done. So it's something that a compulsory kind of a thing. Previously, we are thinking of before this pandemic that this is a low cost something and this is not a backbone, but now it's a boon to your sales. So it's something that now it's no more the cost center, rather it's now it's a revenue center kind of a generation, because uh, as it's an evolving of e-commerce platform, so it's a real-time information that every company wants. So whenever there is an vibrations and all, so it's not single chain A, B, C, D, but every company now building a web. So companies in between. So we want a central digitization platform wherein any information and any vibration, whenever in there is in a system. So a company can gather that information and act accordingly. So there is no wastage of time whenever you want to have a resilience in supply chain. So that's the more important part. So not only distribution and flow of your material, but also the information. So how market is reacting towards whatever agenda and whatever strategies you are making. So for me, the one thing that we are considering is the how we can. So one is the tactical things, and the other one is the strategic. So tactical means how we can prevent the loss, but more importantly, going forward after 1 year, after 2 years, how we are doing the things. So that's more important, that we need to look in a holistic view, in a future perspective view. So that's my agenda. That's we need to be more digitized. So it's industrial revolution 4.0, where we need to have more and more IT infrastructure building in our companies, in our surroundings, in our atmosphere, so that everybody should be on the same platform and information flow should be easy. So that's my view. That's it. Over to you, Ray.
Yeah, thank you, Bharat, for your very, very interesting remarks. And now we move on to Atul, who is in the center of action, because the pharma industry depends at the end of the day on the logistic service providers. And Atul, with his experience, I'm sure he'll give us some practical insights into the aspect of building resilience within the supply chain. Atul, over to you. Please unmute, please.
Can you hear me? I said hello to everyone, esteemed listeners, and Rayan and everyone. So I will take this question, as Rayan said, from the delivery side of the supply chain. From the delivery side of the supply chain, when these pandemic started hitting globe, so we became very conscious that if the kind of situation we are seeing in France and we are seeing in US, if that happens to India, and India, with a country of so much population, how we are going to handle it. So we started putting the process in place, and I like to share one thing, that we are working with one of the largest pharmaceutical company in India, who is also into the vaccine. So for us it was all the more important that how do we plan for this. So one thing we have done to we changed the word supply chain to supply change. So we said, okay, now this supply chain, execution has to change to meet what is the challenge in front of us. So what we have done, that we have uh, projected with help of ML and AI, the kind of simulations with the disruptive changes which can happen on various parameters. And accordingly, various strategies were put in place. If this happens, this will will be the action plan. If this happens, this will be the action plan. And also simultaneously on the physical part of the delivery, we also started building up alternate models of supply chain. So if trucks are not available, then what is our take on move the goods by railway? If railways are not available, then how we can move the goods by air, and so on and so forth. So this helped us in preparing much better way. And we were on the less hitting side on the disruption in the supply chain. We also got the award for the resilience supply chain for 2020 in India. So that is a testimony of what we have done. Then one of the things which we have done very closely with the with our principals, that there were certain categories of drugs which were identified as critical drugs in such situation. So those drugs we have started maintaining, at various centers, minimum stock levels, which are as per the perceived demand, looking at the scenario, and which is evolving into 100% more down, 200% more down. That is how we handle the whole situation on that. On the resource side, one thing is very important, that we also managed our resources in such a manner that the multi-skilled people at the various locations, those are panned across India, so that in case there is a need of putting a alternate resourcing plan, so they are available on those sites to handle such situation. So all those practical steps we have taken on the ground, that has yielded very good results on the ground for us. And I am happy that we were able to manage the situation for our principals and for our customers in a much better manner than we expected, or the way industry was going.
Thank you, Atul, for the different perspective from the point of view of logistics service provider. I would like to ask my next question to Bharat. So Bharat, I'm sure you're aware that in today's world, the increasing importance of visibility and traceability of the pharma products is becoming more and more critical. And therefore, could you throw some light on how we can integrate the pharma supply chain to increase this visibility and traceability of the products?
Very right question, and actually, it's a need of the hour that companies now want, or even customer now want the visibility of your product. How, even if it's a cold chain product, if it's a product 228 -20 or vaccine, but so how the from which hands it's passing through, what's its whole chain. So even now, customer are demanding the data, and now with the e-commerce platform, the companies are showing those, that we have a real-time structure, we have a real-time messages going on. So one thing and most thing is that we need to digitize these things. And how we can digitize things? We need to have a platform. A platform on the compulsory, it's something that, because whenever you are doing, so it's an outsourcing job. Okay. So all the transportations, and it's a multiple hand. So it's a manufacturer, then manufacturer to the godowns or the warehouse of the companies, then it will to the transporters, then transporters 1, transporter 2, and then further outsourcing to these, and then to your retailers, and retailers to the customers. So the one thing is that we are into a 30 states. So it's not 30 states, but it's 30 countries. Okay. And every states have their own laws with regards to transportation, with regards to storage of pharmaceutical goods. So India as a whole is coming into a digitization platform, but it's still a long way to go. So if you can recall of your times, that from 2002, 2004, we are into the concept of supply chain. Before that, it's only the godowns kind of a thing, where sales team of a region is managing all the inventories and all. Okay. So it's a nascent stage. With respect to training, we need to train the lot. So it's still, because now these third parties coming out, as Atul is already agreed, that there are training procedures with a multi-skills kind of a thing. And my industry, in logistic industry, actually skilled people is still a challenge. Okay, तो जो कुछ नहीं कर रहा वो logistics में है. So still there is something kind of a thing that so the notion is that, and these third parties which evolving things just like FM Logistics and other companies, so which have infrastructure and which are doing the things. So it's something that now skilled people are there. And e-commerce like Amazon, Flipkart, and any e-commerce company, they are so much tech savvy that even now a single customer want, if he ordered a page, then in which order cycle and in which stage of the order cycle that product is. So, but showing the visibility of the product is most important if you want to be in the market, the first. And second, you need to have a single platform. For example, if a company having its own platform where every vendor, because it's a vendor plus two vendors, three vendors, just like automobile companies do. That thanks to all these automobile companies, where now we learn something. The pharma industry is learning from them that what's vendor management inventory, what's actually the in-transit inventory tracking is all about. And we are actually come a long way, and still it's long way to go. And my only takeaway is that we need to digitize the systems. The person dependency should be minimal. We used to have certain called a Pocoyoco system where if there is a breach of something, then it's need to be highlighted. So just building your web stronger and stronger by each day passing. So that's it.
Thanks, Bharat. Maybe Vickram, I can ask you to add something to this. Would you like to?
Sure. I mean, adding to what Bharat is saying, I mean, just to take a very simple anecdote, I mean, now if we do a Swiggy, we know when the order was placed, who is going to pick that order up, where is the bike of that Swiggy delivery boy, and estimated time of delivery. That's the kind of digitization and traceability and visibility we are talking in our supply chains. And we are talking about probably a 50 rupee donut. And when we talk about critical life-saving drugs like pharmaceutical drugs, which are costing probably 50 million plus dollars, in the shipment, so you can imagine what kind of traceability and visibility the customer is expecting now. I mean, I as a shipper now would like to have real-time information on where my shipment is. Are there any cold chain breaches happening in the shipment, and what are we doing to mitigate those risks? I mean, it's not just that the information needs to be provided. I think we are bridging that gap now. We have active passive RFIDs, we have GPS tracking systems, we have data loggers to get us that information. So data is coming, but how do we get that real time accurate data, and how we can take steps or risk mitigation steps to mitigate the risk of my shipment or the product from going bad to worse. I mean, that is where a critical part has to be played in terms of visibility and supply chain. And we are talking about industry 4.0. I know pharma is probably not in industry 4.0 right now, but we are talking about continuous manufacturing. We are talking about digitizing our entire space, right from demand sensing to my finished goods dispatches, and the entire chain in between, how I collaborate and coordinate with my vendors. We are talking about blockchain, where we have seamless exchange of documents. So in my mind, there are different facets and functions within supply chain where we are talking about digitization, transparency in different aspects. When we talk about logistics, we need real time temperature, probably details where my shipment is. When we talk about procurement, we want to collaborate with my vendor more. I want to understand what kind of inventories my vendor is keeping, and also want to give my vendor the kind of visibility I have with respect to what demand forecast is going to come, so that if he needs to start his planning cycle or his procurement cycle of the raw material, he can look at that data which my sales and marketing team is giving to me. I can give that transparency and visibility to my vendor. So that is the kind of visibility I'm talking in terms of the procurement function. When we talk about operations, again, how my QA and QC are going to, have visibility of the manufacturing process in totality? Are there any deviations happening in the production cycle? Are there any critical, deviations that we need to take care of? So what real time information or what real time action my Q and QC can take to mitigate the risk at the batch that is on the production floor? So what I'm trying to say, answer is, it's digitization, the seamless information flow, visibility, transparency is is as important as probably having a smartphone today. None of us can operate without a smartphone. It's become like our ID. So in my view, supply chains are going to mimic that aspect as we go forward, and this cycle is going to go forward very quickly. We've been talking about blockchain and industry 4.0 for the last 5 7 years, and as we are stepping into it, I'm already hearing people talk about industry 5.0, how robotics and human interaction is going to be there, how they are going to help with respect to AI ML learning, and how they are going to help us in our decision making, right, seamlessly downstream from your sales and marketing, doing a unified demand sensing, right up to your procurement and inventory management with your vendor. So that's the kind of value chain transparency and visibility we are talking about, so that everybody in the value chain, right from your sales and marketing to your logistics guys, to your sales and to your supply chain planning, demand and supply planning, to your operations guy, to your procurement guy, everybody works on that common number, and everybody is chasing that same common goal to ensure that in the VUCA environment that we all live in today, we are always able to be agile to meet the customer requirement at the end of the day. Because in generic pharmaceuticals that we are representing over here, your shelf space can go immediately if you're not available on with the pharmacy. Your product can be substituted very quickly. So it is very important and paramount for us going forward, right, sir? That's my take.
Yeah, Gaurav, you are into retail pharma, so I'm sure traceability and visibility is going to be of paramount importance. So can you also share some of your experiences?
Sure. Thanks, Ram. So, Bharat and Vikram said, just at the cost of being repetitive, but something adding to it, the traceability and kind of visibility is also very important, from two perspectives. One, it helps you avoid the counterfeiting or the spurious drugs which we are talking about, or which we read a lot of huge numbers, I would say, in terms of value. However, that is coming significantly down. We know track and trace and other good technologies now available, and manufacturers, I would say at least the large pharmaceutical companies have mostly adopted that. Second, it also gives you a benefit in supply chain as well, where you get to not only know what is your primary sales, but also you can also track in your secondary sales as well. So today, a lot of pharma organizations are still working or dealing in their primary sales, what they sell in the first hand. Whereas with track and trace, further you can get to know your data penetration, and hence more demand sensibility when it comes to an advantage to supply chain by these track and trace, or by these solutions which gives you second or the third level of data visibility. Third, coming to the question or the point which is asked here, is in terms of the retail pharma stores. So in e-commerce industry, I'm sure all of us are seeing and reading and understanding there is a lot of consolidation happening. So there are, I would say, in recent times, just 3 or 4 M&As happened, by Reliance, by Tata Digital, and then by PharmEasy API, or for MedLife. So a lot of deep pockets are coming in, and here I think is a very great opportunity for partnership of the manufacturers the government, these e-pharmacies, as well as I would say institutes who can even train the last mile customer who will be getting these at the end of the day. It is a layman, a customer, for example, me as a customer who's ordering something is getting in hand. How do I know whether this is the actual product or the right product which I'm supposed to get? A lot of organizations are again working on it to improve this traceability, this visibility a lot. I think like the example mentioned for Zomato or Swiggy, same ways, I think there should be something in this powerful device which we all use, so that I can understand. And very similar case which I read about for remdesivir. So it was not found by any device. It was actually a smart doctor who found it, that the after mixing the solution to the lyophilized cake, it did not turn pale yellow. It remained white. So he doubted how is it happening for this specific cases. So such kind of intelligence which is available with I would say good learned doctors, how can you convert this learning to a layman, a person who is today, because we have a lot of digital penetration, smartphone penetration now, and India is definitely the biggest market by all numbers, by all parameters for smartphones. So how can you use this smart device to make that end customer even more smarter? And there has to be a partnership, as I was mentioning, where even these e-commerce retail pharmacies who have now got I would say good customer base, and the growth that they are looking at is almost to the tune of 100%. So you can imagine the e-commerce customer base increasing in I would say next 1 year, next 5 years down the line, and they can partner in this big time because of both the volumes that they are projecting, the customer behavior that is changing in terms of ordering, and this pandemic catalyzed the entire process of digital adoption. So yeah, I think digital will be a big enabler in terms of visibility, and it is up to the strong partnership that we can all build in to make it more significant, transforming the entire supply chain.
Yeah, thank you,
Thank
Gaurav.
you.
I just want to slightly move to a different topic. I'm taking on what Atul said in his first, opening remarks. I think Atul, you mentioned that you're doing a lot of specialized cold chain requirement work for vaccines and maybe other complex formulations. Could you share something to us so that we can also share some views? If we have maybe learnings or sharing, it will be nice for us. I think you'll have to unmute. Atul, you'll have to unmute.
So one of the very prime learning which we are having is that the kind of specialized treatment which cold chain distribution requires, that is not just a kind of a normal cold chain, because certain formulations are at different temperatures, certain vaccines are at different temperatures. So the challenge which was with us when we started this vaccine thing, that how do we cater to this thing. Then probably we adopted one of the tool which is currently we are using in our pharma vertical in the different countries. That is real time visibility of the cold boxes which we transport in our cold chain vehicles. So that gives us a kind of uh, kind of confidence that at all the levels of distribution, in all the delivery supply chain of the vaccine, so same temperature is being maintained. Two things very important. First is that technology which was a part of in-house development of FM Logistic, that ensured that that kind of data is getting transmitted, and that is a real-time visibility to the customer. Second thing is the kind of infrastructure which was required for that. That was a little different from what is normal cold chain availability in India. So we worked with some of our vendors and we ensured that kind of refrigerated boxes which are fitted on the vehicles, they are developed in concurrence with those designs, which assures that big downs are not there on the way. And second very important thing is that the routing, where the routing is happening of the vehicle, there are certain critical points on that routes which are also enabled in case there is some backup arrangement was to be made in on route. That was the clinching thing, and that ensured that when we are transferring vaccine, so those are being done at a very appropriate level. So this was done in a manner that we monitored. When we monitor and we will take the help of machine learning and AI systems, we found that this kind of technology and infrastructure which we're using, that is more than 6 sigma. So that is occurrence of any failure is a 6 sigma kind of a thing, which gives a lot of confidence to us that we can now upscale it into the Indian industry, and we can bring the kind of changes which are required. And also, this learning does not what we applied is not because that we were managing just Indian supply chain part of it. Many things were learned out of the international supply chain, that when the goods leave manufacturing facilities, then they change hand with the cold rooms, freezers, refrigerators, cool boxes, that the entire study, we picked up the good points out of that, and we built that model to help our customers to adapt that. And probably in the coming days, we are going to develop full-fledged vertical on pharma in India. We are actually building multi-client facilities which with the dedicated pharma chambers, which will have the different temperature zones. And on the basis of certain, there are certain regulatory niggles that you want to have a separate stock for every company or every entity. Those are the things, some of the things we have to sort out with the regulators also. But we are in future going to have like on international lines, we are going to have multi-client facilities which are having dedicated pharma centric zones, which can we can issue to we can offer to the various customers, so they can put the stock together in those multi-client facilities. Another thing, very important thing, during my discussion with many of the supply chain gurus of pharma, one of the things which they are asking for, they want to now being dwell near to the customers or near to the consumption base. They're asking us, can we open some urban logistics centers which are more of pharma centric. Why they want to do it now, outbound deliveries of the pharma companies, they are very complex. There are stockists, sub-stockists, super stockists, then there are hospital stockists, generic stockists. So the visibility of the product is also being lost once the goods are reaching to CFAs, right? So with the urban distribution centers, if we start a urban distribution center for your hospital division in Delhi, okay? So this means from manufacturing, goods are directly coming to us, and we know that which hospital is being catered to. Simplified supply chain, manufacturer, urban logistics center of the reputed 3PL, and to the hospital. And you can if we extend this model to the critical drugs, where you want to see the drugs efficacy also is a directly proportionate to which condition of storage those drugs are held. So this is also going to be a next step, that how we are going to simplify that. It brings agility in the supply chain, and so many benefits of the future trends which will happen slowly into the Indian market.
So, Atul, I think you have really brought this discussion to the next question. I think it's very nicely we are moving to the next question, and my next question would be more India centric, okay? Because we have global logistics, we have India logistics, and India distribution. And as I said in my opening remarks, we've seen the typical farmer distribution, carrying on in the traditional way. I'm sure there will be some major benefits of that. But even post GST, we find very little change which has taken place except for e-pharmacy. E-pharmacy is a completely new concept, so which is coming as a new way of doing business. And I don't take names, but with the recent acquisitions by large groups of the e-pharmacies, we can now see that there is traction, in that aspect, which was earlier a lot of resistance from a lot of quarters. So my point is, I just want to open a discussion, and I would like especially to ask. Let's begin with, say, Bharat, if you don't mind. What do you think would be the current and future trends of pharma distribution in India? How do you think it's going to move? I mean, I'm not asking you to focus, but can you sense changes? What do you think? Please go ahead.
Rian, just to take the point of Gaurav, where he said that there are deep pockets involved in the distribution now. So it's a takeover, just like you mentioned. So there is a reason that there are these deep pockets now want a share in the Indian pharma industry. So the main reason is right now we are into approximately a $50 billion company, $50 billion market in India for all the drugs and formulations that we are into. And with a CAGR of 12 to 15%, it will grow approximately 2.5 times, 3 times. That means 130, 140 billion by 2030. So in another 7-8 years, we will be having a stupendous growth. And not only that, the figures prove that. So we are already supplying 60% of the world's vaccines from India. So we are the largest manufacturer of vaccines. So we have approximately 20% share of the formulation drugs, generic formulation drugs, if globally we are talking of. So we have the largest number of plants, US FDA approved plants in any country. So we have approximately 3,000 plants that are US FDA approved in India. And more than that, we are having more than 11,000 plants, so manufacturing units, which are involving in their cells in manufacturing of drugs, whether it's API, whether it's formulation, whether it's generic. Okay, so these are the big numbers, and big pockets want a share from this cake. Okay, and when you are saying the evolving, obviously overall supply chain of this country is now evolving. So with coming of GST, which actually solves much purpose. Previously, we have 30 states, 30 countries, and because sometimes when it's in a Delhi NCR region, states like Delhi, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, so we have 4 different warehouses within a vicinity of 100 kilometers just to save some taxes, central tax and all. So after GST, there are change of strategies, but now people talking of what's the service level. So previously, it's only the availability factor that we are considering. So now it's the service level. So because competition is huge, everybody wants. So from blue ocean strategy, now we are into a red ocean. All the e-commerce companies are into a red ocean strategy, wherein it's more important of your services, your availability factors, your cost. So all these parameters now people are thinking of. It's no more, it's a monopoly game. So if a GSK, if any company wants to have any formulation, so it's not on a monopoly. So right now the patent laws are something that after patent, it's a generic market and everybody wants to increase those shares in their market. So evolve means that now you will be on toes. So what customer wants. So you need to understand the voice of the customer. You will be more agile. So, and now the 3PLs come to a picture. What Atul is saying now, it's an aggregator game. So because if you are a standalone company, you are not good in. So let all the aggregators, let all what I'm saying, all the masters do their job. So we are a manufacturing company. We should focus on manufacturing. We should focus on what exactly we want to give to a quality product to a customer. at the same time, the players like FM and other companies and other big companies, they should partner ourselves. So, and after pandemic, rather, I'm saying in pandemic, one thing is for sure that every company have agreement is one thing with any vendor, and the other thing is the carrier relations. So every company now maintain the relations because it's a demand in the supply game, and when you have a huge demand and it's a limited supplier, so it's a face value of a company, it's a face value of that manager, and many other things that comes into a picture. Because if a logistic partner is only having a capacity of 10 kg to transport, so who's 10 kg, that matters. So you need to maintain the relationship. So no more it's a vendor or a buyer game. So it's a partner kind of a thing. So previously we are only thinking of the partners, that those are the distributors, but now the third party service providers are also our partners. So what I believe, we should have a regular audit mechanism to these partners also. What is their training schedule? So if a company can add value to their training schedule, so that's good enough. And in pharma company, this training plays an important role, because you cannot say, because it's a life-saving drugs. We are dealing 50% of the drugs are life-saving, if I apart from those generic drugs. But so we are dealing with the human lives. So training of those person who are handling those drugs is more important. And not only with the perspective of warehousing, but I am saying on the perspective of transportation as well. So it's a highly fragmented transportation sector in India. Uh, and somewhere some companies are coming, just a technical platform that they are giving, just like Blackbug or any other things, that wherein every small vendor, which having a owner of 10 trucks, 5 trucks, so can be consolidated on a single platform, and we have a standard procedure. So where a government can also intervene, that there should be a minimum kind of a service level that should be flown from any transporters. So obviously there is a long way to go. A lot of work need to be done. I'm not saying that work is not done. From past 20 years, we already evolved ourselves to a stage now. It's a next level. Just like Vickram talking of not only 4 but industrial version 5.0. So before 5.0, we need to have our screw tight so that we can be a more acceptance of a thing. So it's not something that we need to give, but people should accept on the terms of 3PL. So future is bright. 3PL companies, big pocket companies, deep pocket companies should play their role and comes to, so that we can have infrastructure ready. Even I think another 2-3 years, 4 years game, when this IT plays into another role kind of a thing, another way. So right now nobody is asking for GPS in trucks, because now that's the minimum criteria to be a transporter, to be enrolled in a company. Your truck should be a GPS fitted. Now what we are thinking is service levels. It's a 30 hours time. So no more, if it's a destination from to Delhi. So previously we are talking of days, 5 days, 6 days, 4 days. Now after e-commerce, we are thinking of 38 hours, 42 hours, 52 hours. So these are the things that are changing, and it's long way to go. Future is bright, and I'm sure with lot and lot people joining this as a profession, lot and lot management graduates joining this as a profession, we will be evolving. We will be evolving in a right direction. That's it.
Yeah. Gaurav, any comments on this?
Sure. Thanks, Ryan. I think very well, largely covered by Bharat. Just to add a few points, I think one very fundamentally, the way Indian consumer behavior is changing. That is most important. Looking for one speed, which is agility. Then they are looking for visibility, and they are also looking for convenience. So how much conveniently they can order, they can buy, that is the first thing. Second, how quick you can reach out to them, deliver them, and how good visibility you can provide them, right from the node to the hands of the consumer. So I think when you club all these three, I believe these three are actually the very basic fundamentals or principles which will you will see the driving reasons. One is agility, as I mentioned, reliability, and finally visibility. So if your logistics, your last mile delivery, your overall value chain, I would say, is agile, is reliable, and finally you have a great visibility end to end. I think earlier also it was mentioned, the systems today, they are digitally connected, like IBP. A lot of organizations are using IBP, which gives you end to end visibility right from the demand sensing, demand forecasting, supply planning, and finally at the procurement, material requisition, and auto planning. So end to end, last mile till the last mile delivery hands of the consumer, all systems are connected. You have a phenomenal visibility. So these three features or parameters will be the future drivers and definers of the supply chain, in my view, and that will also drive distribution largely.
Yeah, so actually, thank you, Gaurav. Bharat did mention that there are going to be a lot of changes, and the pharma companies need to focus on their core competencies. Correct, which you say is manufacturing and products and technology. So I'm just throwing it open, and maybe Vikram can share something. It's just an open thought. Say large companies, say like Sun Pharma or whether it's Mankind, for you all here. If what is your take? Say if you hand over the distribution to a 3PL, 4PL, does it make business sense? Does it make? Do you get better service? Do you get better visibility? What is your take, Vikram? Can you share your opinion?
No, no, absolutely, Ryan. I mean, this is going to happen. I mean, and it's already happening, as we say. I mean, if we talk about, pharma companies in India. So we most of the pharma companies, they have their own central warehouses from where the distribution happen to CNFs and to different depots through 3PLs. And further stocking the primary, after the primary billing, the secondary and the tertiary billing, or to the retailer, it's happening through the distributor and through the 3PL. If we look at exports logistics, it's completely, we are relied on logistic service providers and 3PLs to ensure that the documents are provided timely, the shipment moves, we get the freighter, or to get the space in the ship, it moves to the destination port. And from there also further, we deal with multiple 3 players, be it the big companies like DHL and all, or it be small localized 3PL service providers. So that is going to happen because it is time that we look at the value chain, and where we can add the where our core competencies lie and where we can add value. So if we have to look at sales and marketing, if you have to look at product development, manufacturing, that is probably where pharmaceutical companies are looking at their core competencies. Logistics primarily, in my view, has already been largely handed over to third parties. We still have logistic services in the organization, but that is primarily to coordinate with the internal stakeholders and the logistic service providers, look at what best freighting options we have, look at cost, cost analysis, look at how we can balance between air and sea. But once those decisions are taken, once we are clear what needs to move by air or sea, it is primarily then handed over to a 3PL or a logistic service provider to seamlessly get in the container at your factories, get it stuffed, get it custom cleared, and connect it to the vessel or freighter. So in my view, we are already doing it, Rancer. I mean, and that is going to get even stronger as we move, even in India, not just for exports, even domestic distribution. I feel with the advent of high competition, I think even in warehousing space, I think you can have large warehouses, and with the advent of e-chain in pharma. You did mention about how the new normal, in the new normal we are going to be visiting the doctors less. The doctors are going to have a virtual consulting with their patients, and the patient is going to online apply plan for all their medicines. So we are going to have probably small micronized stores which are closer to your urban spaces, where you can have a shared space with a lot of other companies, and the digital service provider, so to speak. If you have to talk about the Farm Easy or any retailer who's has a digital space, so you can apply on your phone and they pick it up from their localized stores, and within a couple of hours it's you go in, uh, just like you go into a pharmacy store and you pick up your medicines, it gets delivered to your house. So these are the kind of new normal, in the new normal you're getting into, that this is going to happen more and more, and people are going to look at, the companies, the larger companies are going to look at their core competencies, and then outsource these activities, which is going to be the need of the business also. Yeah.
Thanks, Vikram.
Just,
I think we have.
just
I
one.
think we. Who's
Sorry,
speaking?
Just Ryan, if you
Ryan, just
allow me.
Yeah, of course,
quick
Atul. Go
point
ahead.
to add.
So I was just, we are entering
Okay,
into
Atul, go
era
ahead.
where
Go ahead, Atul.
we wanted to become, pharmacy of the world. And one of the most important thing which we need to, adjust the levers here is how do we bring our supply chain cost down from the pharmaceutical industry point of view, right? So if we compare our current average, if I see what is my current supply chain cost of the pharma industry on the whole in India, this is 25%, right? Whereas if I take 10 or 12 best of class in Indian pharmaceutical industries, so then the cost is around 18%. This is against the global cost of 10%. So if 25% to 10% is going to to be achieved, so one of the ways to achieve it, that let the specialist handle the specialist part of the things. Like Gaurav said, we handle manufacturing, supply chain companies handling their supply chain part and planning part, and this is how we are able to help each other to bring that cost within the bracket where we can jump on to become the real cost effective pharmacy of the world. Just wanted to add this thing. Sorry, Gaurav.
Go ahead, Gaurav. Go ahead, Gaurav.
No, no, absolutely, absolutely fine. So just a quick point to add. I think what exactly Vikram mentioned, the things are moving exactly like in the same direction, and I can see very closely in practical life as well, that a lot of distribution centers are or depots which were earlier very large formats, they are converting into in terms of now, more I'm saying in terms of e-commerce and or pharma e-commerce, they're converting into either DCs, which are distribution centers, or FCs, fulfillment centers. So some of these regions, metros are having the larger formats, which are DCs. Some of these are having FCs. The intent is to be as close as possible to the customer, and also how can you kind of quickly deliver with the least possible cost. So that is exactly what we are also seeing. Then also one more quick point in terms of the entire distribution. Even the distribution planning, which was earlier done, say through Excels or kind of a lot of manual interventions, there also a lot of technology and tools are getting into play. A lot of DRPs are getting into the distribution play. So distribution requirement planning, you do it on a very proper tool, and based on your multi-echelon nodes. So today it's no more about single echelon and single flow. It's about multi-echelon flows that you have and nodes that you have. So the company will not deliver to one central hub and there you follow hub and spoke, but it will be multiple delivery centers. Again, the intent is to increase the speed. The intent is again to bring in more kind of agility. And last but not the least, it is also about omni-channel, which is omni-channel distribution also coming into play, where the customer can order either ways, through offline, through online, and he also gets a choice to get his delivery again, whether it is online or he can pick it from a nearest convenience store or a smart point store to pick his deliveries. So there is a lot of, I would say, hybrid or a omni channel strategy coming into the deliveries as well as distribution, which we will see more into future. Yeah,
Thank
thank you.
you. I think we have time for one last final comment. I think I would request if each of you could share within a minute, so that we get into correct timing for Q&A. And I would request you to just make a comment based on summing up of discussion, and also keeping in mind how we would build competencies for the pharma sector in future. But please limit the comments to around a minute each. Thank you. Maybe we can start with Vickram.
Thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir. I mean, definitely. I have four things that I would want to, take away and quickly putting them as to how we can make ourselves resilient, be future ready, be industry 4.0 ready, be industry 5.0 ready. So I have four key takeaways. So one is proactive crisis management that we've talked about, building resilience, building agility into your supply chain. How proactively I can look at the changing business scenario in the VUCA world. Supply chain visibility is something that I think we spoke about extensively during our discussion as well. We talked about traceability and visibility and transparency across different pockets of supply chain. So that in my mind is going to be very important. The supply chain visibility in my mind is what the third key takeaway for me is also is digitization, how we are going to digitize and digitally transform our supply chains, because that is going to drive a lot of supply chain visibility and bring agility. So it is non-negotiable, so to speak. Going forward, we all need to be digitally enabled in our supply chains. And for the last key takeaway that I would want to give is how we can build sustainable business models, how we can do different kinds of scenario plannings, plan A, plan B, have risk mitigation plans. It is no longer about your SNOP, your business process re-engineering. It is more about business continuity plans. So that very quickly, sir, are my key takeaways. How we are going to make pharma ready, Indian pharma ready for the next wave.
Thank you, Vickram. Thank you, Vickram. Gaurav, can you give us a 1 minute summing up, especially on building competencies for pharma?
Sure. So, largely, I would say to summarize, one is ARV, as I mentioned earlier, the key pillar, agility, reliability, and visibility. So, if these three are your key fundamental key pillars, then I think you're a very strong partner to your business team. You will be a very strong supply chain for your consumers. So three key pillars. Secondly, how can you leverage the interconnectivity of the entire value chain, and hence not just IBP as a tool, but IBP as a strategy. So integrated business planning, which connects end-to-end value chain very closely, and hence everybody gets one single truth of information, one single source, one single truth flows in all entire I would say sections of your supply chain, or rather the entire organization, even to the finance or even to management. It is one single number that flows as a single truth. Thirdly, and most importantly, how can you not just benchmark within pharma, but look at the best in class beyond pharma to kind of compete and be best in the industry, best in class, competing even with the FMCGs of the world, which are generally known to adopt supply chain much earlier ahead of the curve. So I think we are there in the right direction. It's just again the agility which will take us there. So very quickly summarizing these 3 points. Thank you.
Thank you, Gaurav. Bharat, something from your side in
See,
brief?
just to add on what Vikram and Gaurav is saying, that the one thing is important and that needs to be in the mind that technology will play an important role. So whether in terms of IT, whether in terms of track and trace, whether in terms of real-time data visibility, whether in terms of AI. So every company sooner or later need to invest, and that the need of the hour in the technology part. So according to customization, blah blah blah. So we can discuss on that. Second and the most important point is collaboration. So what Gaurav is saying, the integrated platform. So I have further extended this point to it's not only within company, but to your service providers, to your markets, to your users. So it should be a collaboration with them. So that everybody should be on the same platform, whether you're consumer, that is your customer, whether your service provider or you. So there should be a single platform collaboration, not in terms of IT, but also in terms of trainings, also in terms of whatever audits, whatever you want. So it's the most important part that we need to understand now. So collaboration and collaborative relations. So now companies want to invest on the relations with management, on the relations with what I'm saying is third parties or service providers, and relations with your customers. So both the words are more important. And the lastly and the most basic thing is it's we need to have a standardized service kind of a thing, where if I'm going to a service provider A, B, C, so there should be one single agreement on a country level, on a state level, that this is the specific things that you need to get. So that will improve your reliability factors in your distribution system. So my takeaways are on 3 bets only: technology, collaboration, and standard operating procedure across the industry. That's it.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you, Bharat. And finally, Atul, some closing remarks from you.
For me, that if I see on the next 1 decade how we are going to give the shape to the pharma industry. So one is, I will keep it very basic, which I think is very fundamental things. One is the skill development. We are with the technology and automation, our workforce which currently working in the pharma sector, they are losing their relevance. And within next few years, as McKinsey report pointed out, 27% of our workforce in the pharma sectors, they will not be having those skills which are required. So upskilling has to start right now. So skill development and upskilling of our people to prepare our pharma industry for the future, it is very important, and all our leaders in the pharma sector should accept this reality as soon as possible and start working on this. Secondly, the thing is, which I also spoken about, that the infrastructure development is the basic foundation for the pharma industry, and this should not happen sparingly. That where is my convenience, and I am building that my cold chain chamber there. It should be adequately as per the need of the pharma manufacturing industry where they want. It's not like where I want in the urban areas where I can get the workforce, I get the resources, etc., etc. It should be right at that place where it is needed, and it should be some kind of government collaboration, so we can take it forward as quickly as possible. And third thing is, which is a physical distribution part of it, during the entire delivery chain of the drugs, out of many life-saving drugs, we should be able to maintain the cold chain temperature so the drugs deliver the results for which they are intended for. So the cold chain development is very important, and with the adoption of right kind of technology, right kind of infrastructures. Those are the three things from the point of view that how we are going to build and sustain this pharma industry for the years to come.
I must end by thanking Vikram, Gaurav, Bharat, and Atul for the very open sharing. And I must say, I learned a lot from the discussions today, and I hope you also have got something to take away. And I really thank you. And I now give it back to Tariq from Logistics Insider, who will handle the Q&A. Thank you, guys.
Yeah, I was glued to the screen throughout the session. And I think we had some superb insights from the entire panel. It's kind of sad that we are running out of time and had almost reached the end of today's session. But like it's the way of life. All good things must come to an end. Anyway, I digress. So now it's time for the Q&A round. So let me take a few questions from the audience. Firstly, let me take this question from Mr. Santosh Kumar Wag. He is asking, currently, yet China seems to be competitive and has better supply chain in terms of making products available for the customer, especially to Indian pharma and biotech industry. So how do we plan to strengthen our pharma supply chain? Uh, any one of you would like to take it? This is an open question.
I can
Vikram,
take
go on.
it. Yeah,
Yeah,
no problem.
please
So
go ahead.
see,
Yeah.
I mean, see, there are no hidden facts that China is the factory to the world. But
Correct.
when it comes to pharmacy, India is the pharmacy to the world. I heard our panelists talk about the number of vaccines and tablets that they're sending globally. So we are a force to reckon with in terms of pharma. But there is no two ways about the fact that we are highly dependent on China as we speak. So if we talk about say 20 years back, we were sourcing about 30-35% of our APIs and KSM from China. That number has now ballooned to about 65-70% today in 2020. So it has been a systematic drain of of the sourcing from India to China, which is primarily driven by two things which China has beaten us on. A is technology and B is economy of scale, which makes its product very cheap. So to counter that, I believe now the government of India has taken up this very strongly. We have PLIs now, production links incentives being offered by the government of India. The government of India has allocated about 15,000 crores, which if you look at, which is about $2 billion, over the next 5 years to the pharma and the healthcare industry for
Right.
the manufacturing and setting up of the KSM and API factories, of the fermentation plants, of building the basic chemicals. But let me flag out to the groups, to the listeners very clearly, it's not going to be immediate. The process is going to be at least 5-7 years. That's the time frame it takes for the pharma industry to develop a new vendor, to qualify it, to be cost competitive, because at the end of the day we are in generic space. We cannot be taking very expensive medicines. So, and being in a highly regulated industry, we need to have regulatory approvals as well. And we are not just talking about catering to the Indian population. We are supplying globally to all countries. For US and Europe, in UK specifically, we are the biggest suppliers of generic drugs. So all this is going to take time. The good thing is we have taken cognizance that we are highly dependent on probably one geography, one country. The only silver line, or the dotted line, I would say, not the silver line, I would say the only line of caution I would say is, if the governments change in India, the policies need to be consistent. We cannot have a up and down swinging of the pharma policies. It needs to be consistent, because whoever is coming to invest, the manufacturer, they need consistent policies that will be there for the next 10-15 years. That's my take. So yeah.
Great insights. Anyone else would like to add anything to it?
Just one
Just
quick
to add
point,
on,
Tariq.
Mr. Bhatia, you can go ahead.
Okay. Sure. So I think rightly mentioned, and just to add, it is not just about supply chain. So supply chain efficiencies, we are very strong, and that is exactly the reason why we have a lot of we have a headroom and we have an advantage in terms of finished drugs formulation or finished formulations. Whereas on the API KSM, these some of these are natural sources which are very rich in China. On the non-synthetic ones, it is actually difficult, even from the vegetation point of view, also to compete with them. A lot of KSMs and intermediates are natural derived. So they definitely have an advantage there. Secondly, on the non-synthetic ones, we did not actually, if you go in slightly past in history, we did that was never the industry's priority or government's priority. And Vikram rightly mentioned that the PLIs which are now coming up will definitely lead to a lot of advantage, and a lot of focus is already started. And again, sorry to say, but thanks to the pandemic, which has exposed a lot of weakness also to the in the eyes of the government also. They are now, they
Yeah.
can see how much dependency we have on outside India procurement. So there is a cognizance taken, and there is an action plan which has been made by the Ministry of Health in terms of what action plan we need to take. So very clear focus. However, from supply chain point of view, we still have a lot of key advantage in the finished drug formulation, and hence backward integration will yield more result. We have a front end for US almost 25%. We export, what they are importing is from India. 40% for Europe is a huge number. So we have a lot of advantage there in the front end format in finished formulation. So any backward integration will even make us much more stronger there. Yeah, thank you.
Let's hope so. Mr. Rathi, do you want to add something to it?
Just to add on, say this is not only for the pharma industry, but as a whole. So it relates to your labor laws, it relates to your land laws, when
Right.
land acquisition laws. So whenever you want to invest in any country, so you need to be more proactive approaches for governments. So still a long way to go. Government trying hard so that some companies can be attracted to India, but still a long way to go. So it's not only for pharma, but for any other industry also. And any other investor wants that ease of operations, ease of work, ease of doing business. So the ease of doing business is still a long way to go. So that's it.
Right. No, I think Mr. Srivastava, as he pointed out, that even if the government changed, the laws should remain consistent. I think that could go a long way in strengthening our supply chain, the pharma supply chain. Okay, moving ahead, I think we have a very good question from Mr. Sachin Gupta. He is asking how to handle force majeure, the force majeure clause in contracts considering COVID. What's our best procurement model, and how to derive your negotiating on contracts which already have a pre-committed spend agreed with the supplier. So I think anyone who would like to take it.
So just to add on what one is the contract part, and the other is just I mentioned in my discussion also that it's a vendor relation. So it's
Right.
more important how collaborative you are, because see, no one can prepare for pandemic, and that is the fact of the life. So there are agreements and there are collaborations, your relations that matters, the relations with the company. So it's a long term business strategies, long term vendor relations. So in such scenarios, it's a gray area. So you cannot have
Yeah.
a paper pencil that this is right, this is wrong. But it's a tactical way to handle these things. So my personal view, this is that's it.
No, absolutely, Bharat, and that is what I was also going to echo. It's more about treating your supply as your business partner. It's not about sitting across the table anymore. It's sitting on the same side of the table. If you remember, during the conversation, also I was talking about having transparency, visibility. What Gaurav was talking about, ARV, having across till your vendor and till his inventory also. So we know what kind of inventories he's carrying, what are the value and quantities he is procuring at, and he knows what I'm selling and what are the quantities I'm selling. So it's going to be a very collaborative space. You have to have business relationship, treat them as your business partners, and that is the only way we can work collaboratively and have a sustained and cutting edge supply chain. That's my quick take.
Mr. Atul Anand, do you want to throw some?
I can just give an example, Tariq.
Yes.
I completely 200% agree with Vikram and Bharat that this is a relation and how do you treat your vendors. I can just give the example that during the pandemic where we were running all our operations, and our customers were still hit, some of the customers. So we were very clear, and customer also very clear, vendors also very clear what was our outflow, right? Our customer paid us, and what our vendors outflow, we paid it to our vendors. So there was a very transparent methodology, guys. Those are the fixed costs. My backward and forward integrators are also incurring that. This is an example of that. So you pay us this, we are not earning anything out of it, we have to fill the fixed commitment of our vendors, and backwards also. This is how it worked, and it worked very well. And I'm happy to announce that there were no single contract failure during pandemic because of this force majeure clause. So that is important, that we are on the same table. That is a right learning. We should take it away from here.
Okay. So we started this discussion, with resilience. So I think we have a very valid, very important question from Mr. Tapan Shah. I think most of you must know him. Tapan Shah, he's asking, it would be enlightening to understand from the panel about the cost of resilience and its impact on companies' P&L. Riyan sir, do you want to go about it? And then maybe others could join in.
Yeah, see, there are two things. Resilience is one part, and for everything there's a cost. Okay, there's a cost of compliance, the cost of quality. Everything has a cost. Okay, so cost definitely is a factor. But if you are looking at short-term gains, then you will put cost higher than resilience. If you're looking to survive in the business on a long-term basis, then obviously you have to be ready to spend some amount of money for the resilience. I will just share a small experience of my past life, where we had done some investments for exporting products to the US for security, CD pad security, and so we spent a lot of money. And questions were asked, why are you spending so much money just to export products to the US when everybody else doesn't need to do it? So we got a green channel approval for those of you exporting to the US. And the irony is, after we got all this with the cost, we were very benefited because we started producing a lot of controlled substances for export. And all these security aspects came in full use. In fact, at that time, we got, I wouldn't like to use a crude term, but it was more than paisa vasool. Okay. We got a full value for money, much more. And so smoothly, there was no impact on handling controlled substances. And you can see that if you look at short term, okay, then you look at cost today. But if you look at the long term, I think definitely resilience, sustainability, these are points that we have to remember, because pharma companies and business are here to stay.
Brilliantly, sir, myself. Gaurav sir, please go ahead.
Sure. So just to add, I think two examples or two anecdotes. One is before pandemic, or I would say in my previous organization 3 months before with Cipla. So we did a lot of AVDs, alternate vendor development. Now for each AVD, there is a huge cost involved, because you are qualifying that vendor. For adding that vendor, you have to take 3 trial batches, study the data, 3 months stability, 6 months stability, and immediately you don't see the benefit, as Mr. Ryan also mentioned rightly. But when you think from the long term perspective, this wouldn't look to be a cost. it would look as an investment. So it is like having a kind of a plan for your life insurance. So you always you can look at it as a cost today, or you can look at it as an investment for tomorrow. So it's AVDs. And secondly, another thing that we did, besides alternate vendor, you always have a if you have a protective capacity. Now again, going to my previous organization, we saw huge demand of remdesivir injection. Hadn't we got those protective capacities in the lyophilized plant in our Goa facility, we wouldn't have been able to supply what we have supplied. So whether you take that protective capacity of 10-20% ideal as a cost, as a waste, that's a view to look at. Another lens is when opportunity comes, you will be the first one to grab those opportunities. So yes, the 10-15% is a cost, but in terms of opportunity, you have to look at, I would say, beyond sometimes, while we are in business for making business, but beyond numbers. So what contribution you made to the all India is not just in patient's health, but it was in patient's life. And I know personally how many needed it and got survived today just because of those lyophilized simple remdesivir called injections. So yeah, so it's the lens which you apply and when you are looking from the long term perspective.
No, very well said, sir. Very well said. Uh, okay,
So
I think
just
yeah,
to
yeah.
add one point to this, what Gaurav is saying. So what I am saying is कि why we need resilience, because we are not discussing here business. We are discussing a business continuity. Okay, so it's not a normal kind of a thing. So if you can see as a holistic point of view, that if your business continuity will be on a question mark, so you need to have certain things, you need to have certain cushion so that it can be absorbed by that cushion. A simple example, all the companies have IT server. So now there is no company, at least for big companies, I can take a bet. They have two servers or three servers. So backup number one, backup number two, backup number three even. Because why? Because nobody want to have a business risk. So you can jot down your risk, where you are risk, and then you can have your mitigation plans. So you want to have a cushion of 5%, 10%, 50%. That depends on your risk, how the risk big is you are. So if you hold the lock system of your business, then obviously yes, you need to shell something out. So as a holistic point of view, we need to see those costs and all. So my point is this.
No, perfectly put. Uh, okay, so moving on, I think this is a very, important question. I think all the service providers must take note. I think this question is directly pointed at Mr. Rathi, Mr. Srivastava, and Mr. Bhatia. So this is by Mr. Akshay Dalvi. He's asking what factors pharma companies consider while choosing the right logistics partner and cold storage and transportation. So maybe you can start. Yeah.
Well, I mean, for us, it is, I mean, we are looking at, their experience and their technical experts and the trained manpower and facility that they have. Definitely, it is a very important factor to look at. Of course, and like I said in my opening remark, also, the entire distribution logistics has gone for a big toss, especially in the last 6 months. Looking at the high skyrocketing rates of freighters, containers, freighters, passenger freighters gone dry. Nobody's flying anywhere in the world. So that's a huge challenge. So serviceability, availability is also very important. Cost always have been there, because like we've been talking about throughout the discussion, that we are in the generic pharma industry and we need to have our medicines delivered across to the 7 billion plus people in the world in an affordable manner without compromising on the drug efficacy and safety.
Okay.
So these, without negotiating on those two factors and keeping the cost at par. So cost was always there, importantly, but now serviceability and reliability is also very important, because availability of containers has become a challenge. So how do you ship? Even air shipments are taking long time because you don't have freighters flying in and out of India into different parts of the world. And
Right.
container availability, we all know it has skyrocketed. I mean, the Shanghai Freight Index, container
Yeah.
freight index, has for the first time in the history has gone above $4,000 for a TEU, and we are talking about dry containers. I'm not even talking about reefers, which pharma
Yes.
industry uses. So reefers is crazy numbers. 16,000, $18,000 for a reefer container from India to US is like never heard of. So
Yes.
these factors are definitely we look at when we are trying to collaborate with any logistic service provider or the 3PL. Yeah.
See, personally, I believe that the more important is obviously cost. If we
Mhm.
have vendor A, vendor B, whenever there is a requirement, so the first and the foremost is my vacuum, and the second thing is cost. So we need to reduce, and every company have their own cost structure and the pressure to reduce to beat the inflation. So we will not discuss about the cost, but the most important thing is capabilities. So what is actually he is capable of, his
Yes.
past experience, because that past experience will give me the reliability factor. So and the third, and which I am doing personally, just like I have a friend Vickram and Gaurav, so the testimony, so I can give a call that this is a common vendor, he is referring to Sun Pharma or Reliance, so is the vendor good or bad? So this is something, a word of mouth, that we can gauge on how the vendor is, and after getting a contract, how he is behaving. So these are matters for a long term perspective. So
Right.
for me personally, testimonies are more important, even rather. So I can shell out a 0.5% more if I can get a reliable vendor, so that my supply chain distribution is not a toss. So
Right.
that's it. That's it from my side.
Good. Great insights. I think.
Just
Yeah. Please, Gaurav,
just
sir.
to
Please go.
add, I think very quickly in the interest of time, I think all again it boils down to what we discussed, the fundamentals, which is ARV. So how agile my partner is, how quickly can he deliver, how reliable, as I think just now Bharat and Vikram both mentioned, how reliable. So agility, reliability, and what visibility can I have from him, and what visibility can I get in terms of the network that he has, the penetration that the logistics service provider has. Some
Right.
features, I would say, are quite common. I think all those are in business to do business, so they have these fundamental things. But rightly
Absolutely.
said, I think reliability is something which comes and forms the core of it. And I will not go to exceptions, because this pandemic has shown us kind of really the exceptions on the curve. So besides those, even in a normal scenario, 2 years back, we were again looking at these picture, or these parameters. And rightly mentioned, cost goes without saying, because you need to have three vendor quotation minimum, because that is the financial norm. So you need to float the RFQs, you need to get multiple quotation, you just can't select one and tag it and go along. So yeah, that's a given.
Superb. Superb insights. Okay. I'll quickly take one last question. This is from Mr. Gaurav Dubey. He is asking, will we face the COVID's third wave? I mean, we all are hoping that we don't, but we cannot ignore the numbers that are coming in. So, if yes, then is our pharma supply chain ready to handle the disruption? So that's the main crux of the question.
So I think if I can quickly start here, I think we are, after seeing the first and second wave, we all have a good pattern, we all have a good history, and hence we have all have a good learning curve. So to
Yes.
answer the first one, yes, definitely, I can say all are very much geared up, very much prepared in terms of, so the disruption was more in terms of either your procurement, your manpower, facilities running full time. So all those things, I think we have a decent learning we have from the history. So I think we are all geared up. What is more expected that the wave will not be as impacting as the first two were, because we are a lot more vaccinated. Yesterday, what I was hearing again in terms of numbers, almost more than 30% of the population who are eligible is vaccinated. So which is a big number. Yes, vaccination, we all are saying and we all know, and I have full confidence on this, the government and the entire health care system that we have, that they are doing the best possible they can. So we also need to understand there is a cycle at the from the vaccination provider. There is a sterility period, there is a quality testing period, so we cannot expect magical quantities to come out. So there is, and we all being in pharma, I think nobody other than us can understand this entire manufacturing sterility period, quality testing, etc. before the batch comes out. So we should definitely trust the system, and definitely we are prepared.
Great. Anyone else would like to add anything to this?
Just to add on that, no one can prepare for such a pandemic, and also
Definitely so.
that's it. But one thing is for sure, and I can bet on that situation will not be as worst as they are. Okay, so now we are much prepared. We know how to deal with. So these all are the questions that now we generated, and thankfully, keeping my fingers crossed that probably this will not come, and situation will not be those worst. So that is for sure. That is for sure.
Okay.
We all are
Great.
prepared, so we all have everything, procedures in, and how we need to deal with. So my personal views are we are much more prepared, so no need to worry, no need to panic. So at least there will not be any panic in supply chain, which was there last year. That's it.
But let's hope that even we do not have to face the third wave. Let's keep our fingers crossed. So I think that brings us to the end of our today's discussion. As we draw the curtains on today's enriching session, I would like to extend my heartfelt gratitude to each one of you for such an invigorating experience, and of course for your learned insights. So the pharmaceutical industry has truly risen above the challenge of the pandemic, and the years ahead will certainly augur for this rising industry. Unearthing possibilities will be the key, but acting upon it timely and strategically, India may register as the pharmacy of the world very soon. So my special thanks to Mr. Yan for moderating this session to perfection today, and also a big thank you to FM Logistics for powering today's discussion. And of course, thank you to our viewers for the insightful questions. I think the questions actually, gave a whole different perspective to the whole discussion, and making the presence felt in the session a success. So with that, I would like to close today's session, and I wish everyone a very pleasant evening.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Thank you. Take care. Bye.